Right, thank you, and free Palestine.
Which part? Really?
Hi. If Israel is justified in killing civilians because of the acts of terror committed by Hamas, why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did? Because Israel is keeping 13,000 children. It has tried them in military courts. Since the establishment of Israel, 55,000 Palestinian homes have been bulldozed. So why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did if we use your logic?
So I'm going to answer your question, then I'm going to ask you a question if you don't mind. Is that all right? So my answer is that Israel would not be justified in killing Palestinian civilians because of the actions of terrorists. Israel would be justified in attempting to kill terrorists, and civilian casualties are a cost of war. That is just a reality of life. During World War II, there were 70,000 Brits who died during the Blitz bombing, and there were 2 million Germans who died, civilians who died during World War II. And I don't see a lot of monuments in Britain because of the 2 million civilians who died in Germany. The costs of war are brutal, they're terrible, they're horrifying. There's a vast difference in moral scope between deliberately going into a civilian area and murdering everyone you can find and trying to kill a terrorist who is deliberately hiding beneath a civilian area, hiding their rockets in civilian areas, starving their own people. There is a vast difference. Okay, so now I get to ask my question, if you don't mind. So my question is, do you believe that there is a moral difference between Hamas going into, for example, Kfar Aza and murdering entire families, and Israel attempting to target terrorists and accidentally hitting civilians?
Israel is effectively doing the same because Gaza is the most densely populated region in the world. There are 15,000 people per square mile.
So does Hamas get immunity because they're there? So Hamas gets immunity. So
Israel has killed 3,500 children in the past 3 weeks. That's more children. That's more children than have died in conflicts around the world in each of the last 4 years.
So just to be clear, your logic is that if you're a terrorist group located in a densely populated community and you hide behind civilians, you're now immune.
Where are the children meant to go?
So you're immune. Okay. That's a violation of the Geneva Conventions, but okay. You're now immune. Your logic is that if you're a Hamas terrorist...
Sorry, since 2005, 23 out of every 24 conflict deaths have been Palestinian. I don't see any moral equivalency there. It's clearly unjust what the IDF has been doing to the Palestinians because there's a vast disparity between the number of Palestinians being killed and the number of Israelis.
I mean, I would certainly hope that Israel is killing more Hamas
members. This isn't
members.
A conflict. This isn't a conflict. This is one-sided ethnic cleansing.
So, again, I'm just asking you, if based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II, did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did. Many more Germans died than Brits. Based on the numbers, does that mean that Britain was wrong in World War II?
Britain wasn't bombing civilians. There's a clear difference.
You should talk to the people in Dresden, but you can't because they're dead.
There's a clear difference. I agree that war is horrible, but this is not a just war. What Israel is doing is not a just war. There is a difference between fighting the Nazis.
So it is not a just war.
Fighting the Nazis.
It is not a just war when you fight a war against people who murder 1,500 of your civilians and take 233 of them, at last count, captive into tunnels. It is not a just war to obliterate them. Please name a just war.
Israel's been killing civilians for the past 75 years, and there was no headlines about it, and nobody said that the Palestinians were
Israel
justified
does not purposefully kill civilians. Palestinian terrorists do.
Israel has not purposefully killed civilians. Are you willing to stand by that statement?
If Israel put down its guns tomorrow, there would be a second Holocaust. If the Palestinians put down their guns tomorrow, there would be a Palestinian state. That is the reality.
Just the last question, and if I'm fine to answer. So your solution to climate change is adaptation, so more technologies, which is great. My question is, when it comes to actually developing countries that are bearing most of the cost of climate disasters and climate change, and they do not obviously have the money to implement all of those high-costing technologies that the developed world can, what would be a solution for them?
I mean, the solution for them, presumably, would be in terms of mitigating against climate change, the building seawalls for them, too. I mean, if we can give our foreign aid to corrupt foreign governments to embezzle, then we can certainly attempt to build some seawalls in low-lying coastal areas of third world countries. That seems like if you're going to give foreign aid, that seems like not a terrible place to give the foreign aid. But as far, I do reject the generalized argument that the first world owes it to the third world because of climate change, because the first world is the first world and the third world is the third world. I just fundamentally reject the idea that capitalism has been a process of exploitation of the third world and enrichment of the first world, when literally half the world's global poor disappeared because they are not global poor anymore by UN standards over the course of the last 50 years, thanks entirely to the magic of capitalism. So you can't take the benefits and then reject the downsides. I don't think it works that way.
All right, thank you, and free Palestine.
Which part? Really? It's a serious question. What is it?
I'm not going to comment on that.
I mean, I saw you say from the river to the sea, so you can just say it out loud.
Yeah, from river to the sea.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I appreciate the idea that the Jewish state should be wiped completely off the map with the concomitant loss of life. But we're worried about climate change and the humanitarian aspects of climate change over the course of the next 100 years. Sure. Okay. Well, folks, getting into credit card debt, it's really easy. Getting out, the system is set up to make that really difficult. If you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills, you need to check out PDS Debt. PDS provides a service to match you with debt solutions tailored to your financial situation. If you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances still aren't going down, PDS has solutions for you. Everyone with 10 grand or more in eligible debt qualifies. There is no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit are accepted. Now, the fact is that, again, I have a lot of friends who've gotten into debt, really, really difficult to dig your way out unless you have help from folks like PDS Debt. PDS Debt has customized options for anyone struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. They strive to understand your specific scenario, and they can help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. Save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. Stop waiting, start saving. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/Shapiro today. pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. Once more, that's pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. Head on over there, get your analysis right now. pdsdebt.com/Shapiro today.
What do you make of the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, pulling its endorsement of AOC for WTF? Okay. What do you make of the Democratic Socialists of America pulling its endorsement of AOC for not being sufficiently anti-Israel? Did that happen?
It did.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I mean,
I was like
yesterday.
I was in the who cares category.
yeah. Same. I'm just looking for. Honestly, I'd like for the Democratic Party to pull its support from the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. That would be.
Well, I actually think
this is.
I think that
Even without the age, you should care, because even without the age issue with Biden, there's going to be the Genocide Joe protesters at the convention. This is a split in the party.
But let me articulate this. I think that both parties have a real issue with anti-Semitism. And I don't think it has any place. I mean, I've seen the ads with the Star of David that you all ran in different House races.
Right.
I've heard the words that have come out of Donald Trump's mouth before. I mean, we can't turn a blind eye to the anti-Semitism that's in the Republican Party. We've seen January 6th. We saw people in Charlottesville yelling all the
Okay.
worst. But
So
hold on.
here's where this comes in.
But hold on. Can I finish this thought? Can I finish this thought? Sure. Go for it. Okay. The way I wanted to bring this full circle is that, yes, Democrats have to combat the anti-Semitism that's within our own party as well. It needs to be rooted out completely from both parties. That's my only point. It has no place. It has no place in the American political.
I agree. I obviously agree, and I personally have been targeted more than probably anyone else in America by alt-right anti-Semites, okay? Like, truly, by the statistics, as a conservative. Now, let me say that the vast disproportion of people who are anti-Semitic in America right now, unfortunately, I wish this were not true. I wish it were a non-bipartisan issue and there were no anti-Semitism. But the vast disproportion is inside the Democratic Party right now, which is why the Democratic Party seems unable to divide off from, say, Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib. Yeah. It's why they've had such trouble in simply declaring the obvious, which is that Hamas should surrender. It's why Joe Biden, by the way, the other night, even at that foreign policy supposedly masterful display, he had a tough time explaining exactly. He didn't mention the word hostages one time when he was discussing Israel and Hamas. And there are 5 American hostages sitting in Hamas tunnels right now, and he's still talking about slow-walking military aid to Israel to finish off that war. That is because he is deeply concerned that he's going to lose that part of his base that is anti-Semitic.
So
let's be fair. Anti-Semitic, but it's not equal. There's only one party in Congress that equated Hamas equal to America in the same place.
Well, I mean, but
they're sitting elected to
let me also just call bullshit for 1 second, because there was a $31 billion MOU that was signed by what president? Barack Obama. F-35s were delivered to Israel under what president? Barack Obama. The Iron Dome was created under what president? Barack Obama. And so, I've been somebody who's always said that Israel is an American value. I've always said that. October 7th was one of the most devastating days that I've ever seen with my own eyes.
The Democratic Party is not the same party that Obama had today.
Wait, hold on. It actually is. And Barack Obama signed into law the Iran nuclear deal. Barack Obama made Benjamin Netanyahu walk out of the back door of the White House. Barack Obama was the most anti-Israel president in the history of the United States.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was.
Yes,
he was.
Every American
the only possible
president
exception might have been H.W. during his term.
I think that's a teapot, whatever, a teapot.
The idea that Israel does not want to end the conflict is belied by the history of what just happened with the Gaza Strip. So when we talk about settlements, for example, Israel did have settlements inside the Gaza Strip. There were 8,000 Jews who were living inside the Gaza Strip in Gush Katif up until 2005. They withdrew all of those people. I mean, took them literally out of their homes. And the result was not the burgeoning of a better attitude toward the state of Israel with regard to, for example, the Palestinian population in Gaza. In fact, it was more radical in Gaza than it was in the West Bank. The result was obviously the election of Hamas, the October 7th attacks, in which unfortunately many civilians took part in the October 7th attacks. There's video of people rushing who are civilians and dressed in civilian clothing into Israeli villages.
Aren't always the same thing.
Well, no, that is 100% true, obviously. And when it comes to Area C and Israel's supposed deep and abiding desire for territorial expansion in Area C. So for those who are not familiar with the Oslo Accords, and again, this is getting very abstruse, but the Oslo Accords are broken down into 3 areas of the West Bank. Area A is under full Palestinian control. That'd be like Jenin and Nablus, the major cities, for example. There's Area B, which is mixed Israeli-Palestinian control, where Israel provides some level of military security and control. And then there's Area C. And Area C was like to be decided later. It was left up for possible concessions to the Palestinian Authority if the Oslo Accords had moved forward. Those are disputed territories. There is building taking place in Area C by both, actually, no one talks about this, but by Palestinians as well as Israelis. And the question as to whether if Israel stopped building, there have been many settlement freezes in the past, including some undertaken by Netanyahu. And it actually has not done one iota of good in moving the ball forward in terms of actual negotiations. Again, the biggest problem is that the leadership for Palestinians has spent every day since really 67. It's not even 48, because between 48 and 67, Jordan was in charge of the West Bank and Egypt was in charge of the Gaza Strip. And at no point did either of those powers say, hey, maybe we ought to hand this over to an independent Palestinian state, which was originally the division that was promoted by the UN partition plan in 47. Because of that, the leadership post 67 and really starting in 64, the Palestine Liberation Organization was founded in 64, and it called for the liberation of the land. In 64, they had the West Bank and they had the Gaza Strip. So they're talking about Tel Aviv. When it was founded in 64, the basic idea, as kind of indicated by that, was Israel will not exist. And that was a promise that's been made by pretty much every Palestinian leader in Arabic to the people that they are talking to. Yasser Arafat famously would do this sort of thing. He'd speak in English and talk about how he wanted a 2-state solution, and then he'd go back to his own people and say, this is a Trojan horse, and we're going to... If Israel could, if you think that Israeli parents want to send their kids at the age of 18 to go and monitor Jenin and Nablus and be in Khan Yunis, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Israelis do not want that. In fact, Israelis didn't want that so much that they allowed rockets to fall in their cities for full-on 18 years in order to avoid sending soldiers en masse back into the Gaza Strip.
True, but I think Israel does want to continue to expand settlements into the West Bank, right? They want to continue to build. They want to have all of Jerusalem, East Jerusalem as well.
Well, I mean, East Jerusalem has already been annexed. So East Jerusalem is, according to Israel, a part of Israel. That's not a settlement.
Sure.
Okay, so there's that. With regard to, does Israel have an interest in expanding settlements in the West Bank? Why would they not until there's a peace partner?
Sure, that's what I mean. But I'm saying as long as the conflict continues, because even when you talk about
but your suggestion is that they're incentivizing the conflict to continue so they can grab more land.
Well, no, let me be very clear. I don't think there's like a plan. So some people say, for instance, they'll take that one quote from Netanyahu and they'll try to say that he was funding the people in the Gaza Strip by allowing Qatari money to come in, even though he was actually speaking in opposition to Abbas, allowing the Gaza Strip to fall for Netanyahu to clear it out for him and they give it back, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not claiming those theories. I'm just saying that I think that Israel will take a relatively neutral stance towards conflict enduring, because as long as the conflict endures and as long as the settlements can expand, I think that ultimately benefits Israel.
I think there would be let's put it this way. If suddenly there arose among the Palestinians a deep and abiding desire for peace, approved by a vast majority of the population with serious security guarantees, I think you'd be very hard-pressed to find Israelis who would not be willing to at least consider that in return for not expanding bathrooms in Efrat.
I would have agreed with you on October 6th. I think we're probably a year or two away from that right now.
But the point I'm making is that Israelis now realize that the entire peace process was a sham, meaning the people who are on the other side of the table were using it as a Trojan horse in the first place. The death of Oslo is not the death of Israeli hopefulness. It's the death of the illusion that on the other side of the table was anyone worth bargaining with. That's what's happening. And that's why you have this sort of insane disconnect right now between the United States and the Israeli government. Again, it's a unity government. No one in Israel is talking about making concessions to the Palestinian Authority for a wide variety of reasons, including the fact that Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah continues to pay actual families of terrorists who kill Jews.
Sure, the Martyr Fund, yeah.
Right, and
which is from the moderate West Bank.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, again, like the taste in Israel for this is even the people who are the Chilonim, right? Those are the most secular people in Israel, which was, by the way, the place that was attacked on October 7th. I mean, what people should understand is that October 7th was not an attack against settlements in the West Bank. It was an attack on peace villages that were essentially disarmed. And many of these people who were killed were peace activists who were literally trying to work with people in Gaza to get them jobs. I mean, it's just, it's mind-boggling. That's why you've had this ground shift in Israel. The next 20 years in Israel is going to be about security and economic development, period, end of story. Everything else goes second, third place.
Why does leveling Gaza and killing so many civilians, why would that give anyone in Israel any kind of comfort that would kill off the ideology that fueled Hamas, that it wouldn't actually just lead to an increase in that ideology, more hatred towards Israelis, more hatred towards Jewish people? I've never quite understood what the end game looks like here for Israel that makes Israel more secure.
Well, I mean, the end game presumably is security, not a sort of dynamic ideological scoring among a population that right now overwhelmingly supports the October 7th attacks, and prior to October 7th, overwhelmingly supported terror attacks against the state of Israel and overwhelmingly supported the destruction of the state of Israel. The sort of idea that more conciliation from Israel was bringing about peaceful conditions with the Palestinian Authority or with Hamas has been obviously proved false by the fact that Israel literally withdrew all IDF forces from the Gaza Strip in 2005. Hamas took control. They spent the last 20 years turning it into a giant terror base. From the Israeli perspective, my assumption is that what they are figuring is degrade Hamas's military capacity such that they cannot be an offensive threat to the state of Israel, and then try to enact some sort of military control of the area sufficient to prevent any future threat from arising from that area. I'm sure that Israel would love to hand the area over to Egypt. Egypt says no. Egypt doesn't want any part of it. Israel would love to hand it over to Jordan. Jordan says no. Jordan doesn't want any part of it. Israel's tried to hand it over to the Saudis, to the UAE, to the United States, to literally anyone. No one wants to run that area specifically because the population is already quite radicalized and was radicalized before October 7th. And so what you're probably going to end up with, and I said this, I think, the first time I appeared on the show, which was shortly after October 7th in this context, what you're probably going to end up with is some form of joint military rule in the Gaza Strip in which Israel has the intelligence capacity to go in and conduct raids in terror hotbeds the same way that they do right now, for example, in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, places like Jenin, places like Nablus. The IDF is constantly attempting to go in and root out terror cells in these particular areas. One of the big flaws that led to October 7th was the fact that Israel had no forces on the ground and no actual intelligence capability inside the Gaza Strip.
Hey, Ben Shapiro, I just had a quick question for you. So
I have a question. Can I see your face, or is it like prohibited?
I just don't want to associate my face with like my politics.
Is there a reason for that?
I just don't want worried about my career. Is that okay?
Well, it depends about what you're about to say.
Okay, so can I just ask it?
Okay. You can ask it, and then we'll determine whether you are a person who should not be able to get a job.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to know, how hard was it to generate AI generated images of Hamas?
So you should take off your mask now. Not really because what you're saying is so anti-Semitic, but just because what you're saying is so unbelievably stupid that I hope employers take a good stock of a person who does something so dumb. So mask stays on? Mask stays on, yeah, I figured. Okay, there was no AI-generated image. It is a real image. The way that the game works on Twitter right now,
because it's been taken over by a lot of Hamas bots, is that if you put a real image of an atrocity, they will then spam that image with community notes. And they'll do that until the algorithm puts a community note on the image. And then they'll screen cap the community note and pretend that the image was AI generated. That image was not only not AI generated, it was handed to Tony Blinken. That image was specifically, I wasn't the first person to put it out there. That image was tweeted out by the Prime Minister of Israel. So, like, again, this is the amount of just insane bullshit that's being trafficked in this information war is truly astonishing. And the fact that there are people who don't want to show their faces, but they do want to say things like that, let's just leave it. We'll leave it at that. This does not appear to be a highly intelligent specimen. Okay.